Coming down with the heartache. Coming down with the heartache.
On this episode of Between Two Beers, we talk to Rebecca Rolls. Rebecca has one of the most impressive life CVs we've seen. She was the Football Ferns goalkeeper from 94 to 96 before switching codes to cricket and playing over 100 games for the White Ferns, where she won a World Cup. Then, at the age of 36, she returned to football 16 years after walking away from the game and went to a further 2 Olympic Games and 1 Football World Cup. If that wasn't enough, she's also worked for 10 years with the New Zealand Police and held senior positions at the Ministry of Health, Serious Fraud Office and most recently Department of Corrections. She's also a director of New Zealand Cricket, about to start a new job as the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at New Zealand Sport and a commentator for Spark Sport. That's pretty impressive, right? In this episode, we talk about the good, bad and ugly from 10 years as a cop, what the Ferns thought when she came back from 16 years in the wilderness, how she juggled high-performance sport and stressful full-time work, her catch that won the Cricket World Cup final and why the bowler didn't celebrate with her transition into commentary and regrets from her career. Rebecca has a real sense of calmness and authority about her and was top quality company for a really entertaining chat. If you like what we're doing at Between Two Beers and want to support the show, go to betweentwobeers.com and support us on Patreon for $5 a month. You'll also find show notes for this episode there and links to all our previous eps. Hope you enjoy. Rebecca Rolls, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Kia ora, thank you.
This is exciting. We're in Rebecca's beautiful home in Point Chev. I used to live in Point Chev, so it's a nice little trip down memory lane. Shay, you spent much time in Point Chev?
I know this particular street quite well. A good friend of mine lives 4 doors down, I believe, and they have quite a distinctive white fence. And upon turning up, I noticed that this house also has a white fence, but there is also another white fence a bit further down the road. And I may have accidentally, after a stag do, which I referenced a couple of episodes ago, came to the wrong house in the middle of the night.
Sorry, excuse me. Are you suggesting that our guest tonight, there's a possibility you stumbled onto her property in a drunken stupor?
Look, I don't want to comment necessarily on my state, but I have been reliably informed by the owner of the property that there is a security camera. So if that did happen, there may be some interesting footage. Look, it wasn't that long ago. Look, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. But
I don't know if it is irrelevant. I'd be interested maybe after this, Rebecca, we go through some of those old security.
And actually, given your background, it's probably the worst house I could have probably stumbled upon, as we might find out later in the episode as well. But
How funny that I said to you when you said you knew someone on the street. Oh, that explains the helicopters buzzing around all the time.
Yeah. And then when you gave...
It actually does.
When you gave the address, which I won't give out, I was sort of like, oh, that's remarkably close to where I think that might be. And then when I pulled up and I saw the white fence, I just had these horrific flashbacks. So yeah, don't check the footage and let's just pretend like I never started the episode that way.
It's a very hospitable suburb, isn't
yes, it is. It's nice. Well, it wasn't at the time, but it's nice.
Beautiful street. Well, there's an interesting start. You never quite know where we're going to go with these intros, but there we are. Shay, why don't you tell us how you know Rebecca Rolls?
Well, I was trying to work this out on the way through. I mean, obviously with the New Zealand football connection, seeing you in and around the offices, but I don't know if we've ever had that many conversations prior to tonight.
Not a lot. I think we might have crossed paths in London at the Olympic. Well, actually, Newcastle.
Yep.
We were playing our quarterfinal against the States. It's our last game.
And we'd just been beaten by Brazil, a star-studded Brazil. So yeah, the two teams were there at the same time. But you come in super, super high regard from people that I hold near and dear as well. So I'm looking forward to unpacking some of what's there. We are goalkeepers. You're probably a little bit more prominent than I ever was.
I love it. He always gives it a little bit.
Yeah.
We had David Higgins on. We're talking about like event marketing and management. You know, we're similar. We do similar. Got a similar.
I guess it's that Kiwi way.
Yeah.
But Steve was a wicket keeper.
I picked that up on one of the earlier podcasts, so I'm in excellent company.
Yes, esteemed company.
Yes.
But have you ever met Rebecca, Steve?
No,
don't
this
think
is
so,
this
yeah.
is the first time. Rebecca Rolls was always kind of a name that it was kind of always around, but I don't think it was until 2011 or 2012 when you made your Football Ferns comeback. And I was like, hang on a minute, Rebecca Rolls, the cricketer?
Can't be two of them.
Yeah,
There is different story. But
joining back with the Phil. I was like, this is an incredible story, and yeah, followed that closely then. But I don't think it was until this week when Shay sort of pitched you'd be a great guest for the podcast, and I was like, well, sell the story. What? It was like, well, she's a dual international. Has played 100 games for the White Ferns, played for the Football Ferns, and then came back out of retirement 16 years later. But that's not even the most impressive part about it. Her off-field stuff is incredible. It's like 10 years with the police, with the Serious Fraud Squad, General Manager of Audit, Integrity and Risk at Department of Corrections, now with Sport New Zealand. It's like that off-field stuff is, I don't know if you can even really compare your sporting life to what you've done off the field, but incredibly successful in both walks of life. So yeah, I'm looking forward to understanding how such a successful woman was created, really.
oh, thank you, both of you. Yeah, it's been busy, but lots of fun, obviously.
Well, the way we tend to do things is we canvass around for stories and opinions, and we've asked quite a lot of your peers and colleagues and contemporaries to give us some sort of character background. And I don't think, Shay, we've ever had such unanimous glowing references as we've had for Rebecca. And I'm going to read what some of them have said.
I will throw in there, we weren't able to get too much from your cricket background, so maybe that's where the skeletons are. We'll find out a little bit later on.
It's possible. Yeah, we didn't get much from the fraud squad either.
That's good, because they're legislators, they can't talk.
So Maya Jackman says, she's such a closed book, lol, but has to be one of the most smartest, talented, not just in sport, but life in general, hard-working peeps I know. She's one of those people that is good at everything she does and almost appears to have no chink in her armour. Katie Duncan said, always has a sense of calmness about her in all situations. Danny Robinson said, ultimate professional, hard as nails too. She would smash my goalkeeper bravery sessions without even blinking. Robbo, of course, getting a little line in about how good his sessions were. Tony Redding said, such a top person, ultra professional, good team player, amazing how she balanced work and sport to such a high level in both. Very good role model. And Priscilla Duncan, she's a proper role model for those of us wanting to succeed in sport and career. Has had big jobs, managing big teams, plus her governance work, and has nailed them all. Which, it's a pretty incredible character report. I know it can be difficult sometimes, a bit awkward to hear such sort of glowing praise about yourself. But yeah, I guess the question at the end of that is there anything you can pinpoint from your childhood or the way you were brought up that set the platform for this kind of incredible character, by all accounts, that you grew into?
Obviously, it made me a really good greaser. For all of those people. It's funny, I think everyone's got their own unique journey, and I'm certainly no different. I think as a girl playing boys sports from a young age, that definitely is, and I'm talking 35 years ago now, even more. That makes it different, and I'm talking about my sporting career probably, because I think I grew up in Napier. I don't know if you spent much time there, but great place, even better now. But good place for kids to play sport. There's so many facilities. Everything's 2 minutes away. I'm still 5 minutes early every time I go home. And all I wanted to do was play sport. So, but it was funny because I don't think Mum and Dad expected me to want to play the sports I did, which was cricket and football. Mum was keen for me to play netball, which I gave a go. I think I broke someone's arm, so I sort of had to knock that on the head. But yeah, they were the two. That's all I wanted to do, and they kind of had to find a way for me to do that. And we all did together. It was.
How many siblings have you got?
I've got one younger sister, Jess, physio in Napier, fusion physio. If you ever need to get put back in order, if you're in Napier. So yeah, there's just the four of us, and it was hard actually. It was like, I think, when you go along to a football club up to Western Springs or Three Kings these days, there's girls everywhere, whereas I was the only one. And I played for Tamatea Tigers, and you'd play against Port Hill and a lot of the, and there might be, across 4 years of doing that same thing, there might be 2 other girls playing in the whole. So I knew quite early on that I had to pretty much drive myself. It was, I had some really good teammates and some great other dads that were role models, but I had some shockers as well. There were some really real assholes, I've got to say. And the boys I could deal with, but their dads, they were a bit more cruel. And so I think early on you learn to kind of go, well, here's my goal, here's how I'm getting there. And you get an early sense for what you can control and what you can't. And
what do you mean by cruel? Like what would they do?
Oh, just really horrible comments. If the dads, and I should say, it's not every dad I came across. Most were pretty good, but the ones who weren't, they were a bit harder. Wouldn't put me on the field or would criticise anything I did, even though I was never the worst in the team. So it was just literally, I don't know. You look back and you go, well, I must have been threatened or wanted something, felt that I was taking away something from their boy. But yeah, they weren't. Sometimes they weren't very hospitable. So you kind of had to put that out of your head and just get on with it, I think. But I think it's just this drive in me. I just wanted to play sport. I grew up watching big league soccer on a Sunday morning. Remember when that used to be on TV?
Yeah.
One? Got the hugest crush on Gary Lineker, that I still have a little bit of, but he's wearing it down, I've got to say. And then grew up watching when the coloured clothing cricket first started, the Benson and Hedges series, the one-day stuff, the Windies, Hadley, Cairns, Crows, Smith, just idolised them, would sneak out, after my bedtime, hide behind the couch, because that's all that was on TV. That's all I wanted to do, was just watch that and emulate that. So I spent a long time in my childhood going, well, I'm going to go and play cricket with those guys, because that's all I knew, was playing with boys, and one day I'll be playing for the New Zealand cricket
Were
team.
you aware at that early age that you were, obviously you knew you were a girl playing with boys, but was it just like, I'm just going to go and play with my teammates, or was it that kind of real, I'm quite different to everybody else?
Yeah, I definitely knew I was different, well, obviously different, I think what I did know is I had to work a little bit harder. I had to do things a little bit better, I had to work a little bit harder. And that, like I said, it wasn't all the time. And, sometimes you get some really great experiences from some supportive dads, and their sons were actually pretty good, and they'd stick up for me. And that was really quite empowering. I'd be like, oh, actually good. I'm not the only one trying to fight this fight. And my parents were great. They were just always perpetually, kind of just don't worry about them, just get on with it. And you played really well. So it really helps to have that. So I think, and then you do that on repeat summer and winter. So, October comes along and your football boots go in the garage, and out comes your cricket bag, and so then renew, and that's on repeat the whole time. So you're sort of renewing that. But I think my family were a massive influence. My parents weren't into sport. My dad actually had cerebral palsy, so he never played sport, and he couldn't. He had a disability his whole life. So, the lengths he went to make sure that I had what I needed and what I could, participate in. And same with mum. She, played. She learned cricket from scratch. I still joke with her these days about it, because she's a real, she soaks it up now. She knows everything. But at the start, she had to learn everything about cricket. And then my sister just put up with getting dragged to everything. and then she married Chris McIver, who's a footballer.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So he's my brother-in-law, in case you got any dodgy questions about him. So now she's pretty much following him around the whole time. And I've got 2 girls who both play. So it keeps repeating itself. But
where do you think the work ethic comes from? So to achieve what you've done on the field and the career you've had off, there's something there that makes you work harder than other people. Can you pinpoint that?
Probably I'm pretty stubborn. I don't think you get any argument from those people about that. And pretty determined and pretty goal-driven, task-driven. But also, my grandfather was a massive influence for me. He was all of those things, but he was stubborn and everything else. And he, was a traditional bloke, and probably never envisaged he had a granddaughter playing sport. But he really got into my cricket. He played a bit himself, and then he was there for every part of the journey. And I suspect, in addition to having some supportive family circle, he was probably the one that kept just pushing me that little, a little bit further. Like, Mum said, great game, and he'd be like, well, you only got, 20 runs. Do you think you could have got a few more? Like, he'd never go all out and go, you were useless. He'd just be like, well, and a few things he'd always say, like, well, there's no fielders if you hit the ball on the ground, you're not going to get caught out. Those are really helpful things. So I think a combination of that and just probably watching sport and seeing how much fun it looked, how much satisfaction you get out of executing skills. I mean, you guys will both know, particularly with wicket-keeping and goalkeeping, is they're both sports within a sport almost, and they both require skills that no one else in the team's got. So you're already feeling a little bit special. But you never really feel like you're done. And so for me, it was, in those two positions, there was always like just one person I had to beat. If you're moving through, I know you pick 2 or 3 goalies in a squad, but really, everyone knows what the ranking is. So it's, and usually there's a small group, and same with wicketkeepers. You don't, particularly in the White Ferns, once you're in, you have to, it's hard to get out unless you're playing particularly badly or you don't meet the fitness standards or something like that, because you're piling on your experience and getting your skills more and more polished because you're keeping to the right bowlers and that sort of thing. So I think it was just always just something a little bit out of my reach that I was always sort of hunting, I think.
Through school, would you say you excelled more on the field or off the field, or were you just keeping high standards of both?
It's funny, I was definitely quite a brainy kid when I was young. But then I bet I'm not the only one who sits here and goes, yeah, I know, I was the same. But then you get to the point where you're like, I don't even have to try too much at school. And all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I've dropped the ball. So I pulled it back a little bit. So I didn't, I think I was okay. My probably one of my bigger regrets is I didn't see school right out. I didn't stay to the end of what was then 7th form. I left at the end of 6th form to go and play football in Hamilton, because that's where Hawke's Bay football was okay, but Waikato was winning, and I thought, I wanted a bit of that, and there was, so I went to uni based on my 6th form marks and thought, it's the greatest decision ever.
What did your parents think about leaving school to go play football?
I think they would have preferred me to stay. I don't know, it's hard days. Would I have been 16, 17 and thinking, you're pretty convinced you know it all.
I think we've missed a trick here. Did you play for Waikato Unicol?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
We've missed a big trick in terms of our research.
Oh, wow,
that was tucked away pretty. That was 3 years or so.
Well, Stephen's dad, Bruce, was very, very big at Waikato Unicol, so we've missed a huge opportunity.
I know, yeah.
That'll be getting edited out and
No.
go back to.
No, so that here's one thing that I've been thinking of, and I've noted a name down, and it was, so I grew up in Taupo.
Yeah.
And in our football team was Lisa Pardon, and she was very, very good, and later became a tall fern.
Oh yeah, I thought I knew the name, but not from football.
Yeah, and there's something about, I think, girls that grow up in small towns that play sports.
Yep.
I have absolutely no statistics on this, but I would feel like there's a higher chance of them getting through at a top level, because the whole time they've been in their formative years, they've been playing in boys' teams and having to probably try harder and fight all that other stuff. Have you got other people through your kind of circles, through your career, that you can look at and go, oh yeah, she was from Temuka, or she was from Timaru, or somewhere like that, and did the same thing?
Yeah, obviously Maya was from up north, wasn't she? Yeah, and came down to Auckland to play football. I think in Napier there was a few other, like Sarah McGlashan, who played for the White Ferns, so she played a bit of football as well. And yeah, there was a few of us who kind of played a bit of both. Donna Troe, someone else who played cricket for New Zealand. And I think through a lot of the, I mean, the football ferns always end up in Auckland, but they do come from lots of different places, and people tend to centralise. So I think there's definitely that that aspect to it. But you're right, and often if a girl plays one sport, she'll play two, which is excellent. I'm a big advocate for balance is better, and doing everything for as long as you can and as much as you can. And I mean, I think if you're a young kid, you've read all the books about 10,000 hours of practice and that kind of thing. So if you grow up like I did, running around the house bowling, then you're going to be able to, and throwing, you're going to be able to play sport and kicking and all that sort of thing. So if you start that repetition early in life, whether you're a boy or a girl, you're going to be able to reproduce it later. And maybe back, and particularly my age, a lot of the girls just didn't do that. So yeah, I was a bit different because that's all I wanted to do. So I think, and then it starts to show later on. But
were you always a goal when you moved to Hamilton? Were you a goalkeeper?
Yeah.
Did you ever flirt with outfield playing, or was it always?
Oh, my whole career. Yeah, I think I was there's a midfielder in me, just wanting to get out the whole time. It was partly because I was never probably quite good enough to make the teams I wanted to make as a midfielder, or anything really other than a goalie, I'll be honest. And because I was tall, like I knew I had an advantage. Like you just don't. I mean, one of the reasons I went back to playing football was I watched some the World Cup in 2011 and was like, all these goalies are 5'6". How that's such a disadvantage when you've got 8 foot to, and you know, and so I think I get more satisfaction out of being in goal as the level got higher. I knew that I could, you know, perform there a lot better than I could anywhere else. And when I was at Waikato Unico, I had Anne Smith coaching me, who was a football fern. She understudied to Leslie King, and you know the epitome of hard work. And like she would off her own bat in her own time just coach me and Simon Eadie. Actually, she took us both for some sessions, and that kind of, you know, that interjection at that crucial point, it was so good for me because the skills repetition was just over and over and over again. And then, you know, if you are going to pick up a sport 16 years after you drop it, that sort of stuff really helps.
Yeah. So were these two paths running parallel, cricket and football? And at what point did you have to knock cricket on the head?
It's funny because I never thought I would. I was like, no, you can do both. And you could back then. I mean, I'm talking about sort of mid to late 90s. You absolutely could, because it was, like I said before, you had your winter and your summer, and never the twain shall meet, and you could absolutely do that. There was no expectation of your winter sport that you do anything in the summer and vice versa. But for me, probably the point was when I went to police college in 1998, and I'd been playing football. I've been in the football ferns, but it was really different than it is.
It was Swans then, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So Swans, not part of New Zealand soccer, it was then. You go on one tour maybe every 3 years. You'd usually have to chip in a couple of $100 and give you might get to keep your socks, but you had to give the rest back, and it didn't fit anyway, so you didn't care. And so for me, it was like, it's a lot of hard work for not much. And cricket was just complete opposite at that time. The women had just merged with the men. It still didn't mean anything amazing, but we got at least one Rose Bowl series a year, if not that, and a couple of other games, and maybe a tour in the winter. So you know, you're looking at least 3 games of international sport a year. So for me, it was like 3 or none. You know, which is crazy when you think about both of those setups now, what they get to do, and amazing. So, and I think while I was at police college, that was my focus, and I wasn't really doing either, but sort of came out the other side of that. I think there's a tour to Germany about that time, and they asked me to go, and I was just like, you know what? Nah, because I haven't been training, I haven't been playing. And it was always a case back then where you'd be like, oh, wait to see who else says they can go, because then you get a feeling for, you know, which is not great. I've been on a couple of tours where all the good people had gone and it was mint, and then, or a couple of others where, and I was probably one of them, where it was a bit of a who can sort of make it, and they're different experiences. I mean, always really cool. You always learn something, but it's not the, you know, not the height of competition that it is now. So it was probably it for me, and at about the same time, or just before then, I must have made it would have been 96, 97, I made the White Ferns, because Sarah Illingworth, the keeper at that time, retired, which I hadn't expected. Like, she was so good. I was like, geez, we're waiting forever, you know, but she retired, and I was picked, and then I'm like, kind of what I described earlier, if I don't sort of solidify my place now, someone else will come along. So, yeah.
So 97 then. You're working as a police officer.
College.
No, I went to college in 98. So 90, yeah, I went to uni in Hamilton, then got so my qualifications in like sports science and that sort of thing. So I did some work in gyms and the fitness industry, and then joined the police.
Did you work at the Uni Rec Centre on campus?
No, I trained there though. Yeah, I didn't. No, I worked up here in a couple of gyms. So yeah. So then joined college in 98.
But through the bulk, I guess, of your White Ferns career, you were working a full-time job.
Yeah, I was in the police, yeah.
You were in the police, and then what? How many days a week would you be training?
Yeah, most days probably. It was, depending on what we had on. There was still a little bit of time off kind of over the winter, but there was always winter squads in it, so it was all cricket focused for me, and work, of course, because you start off in the police working shift work, whether you like it or not.
Do you get to choose where you're placed in the police?
Yeah, you sort of do. I mean, you sign something saying you'll be posted wherever the commissioner decides you need to be. But by and large, or back then anyway, and I think it's not too different now, you know, you can at least get within Kahui of where you want to be. And I did all my recruiting through Auckland Central, and was, you know, adamant I wanted to go there, and got posted to Counties Manukau. And I was like, oh, damn, it was the best thing. It's the best district. If anyone joining the police, that's where you need to be.
And was that cricket? Did cricket come into any of that wanting to be posted in a certain place so you could play for?
No, I don't think so. I was already sort of established in Auckland then, and I knew policing, and also back then, and I'm pretty sure it hasn't really changed now, is if you wanted to apply for the police anywhere but Auckland, you waited. But if you were happy to go to Auckland, you just got straight in. And I mean, that didn't bother me. That wasn't why I went to Auckland. I was already sort of established roots up here. So, it wasn't. It was a little bit around, at the time the police had unlimited time off for international sport, which, wasn't irrelevant. And also just in a career that really appealed to me in terms of options and the potential for, branching out into different things. I kind of always thought I think I want to get into investigations and being a detective and that kind of thing. But
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I think it's just always been pretty nosy, and it's a really satisfying role, an investigator. Like that whole, you get a new file and you're like, oh, I can see all these leads just jumping out at me, and I need to go through it, and you get to plan it and you tick off all. It's probably a little bit of OCD in there as well, but and it always takes you somewhere you didn't expect to go. And then you add into that in the police, you're working in a team and you get on special operations or on cases or whatever, and there's that whole, obviously I like being part of a team, so part of that was you get to solve stuff together and achieve things. So that's probably, I think, where that part of it came from.
Are there any, and I don't know if you're actually allowed to talk about them, but are there any particularly memorable cases or incidents across those 10 years, or was there that moment that you've solved the riddle and I don't really know how it works? There are. I can't probably remember too many of them off the top of my head, but there's always, if you're working on a homicide, there's always that one thing that,
that part of it. So in the research, that's jumped out at me, homicide, and that's quite a heavy thing for a non-police person to take into account, and you're playing sport at the same time. I'm just trying to reconcile how that works. Are you able to completely divorce the police stuff from then going into the nets and having a long batting session?
I think it's quite there's, what am I trying to say? It's a bit of a yin and a yang situation. You can definitely. I think I was always really determined I keep sport and my career really separate, which is quite ironic now. But because that was my work and this was my kind of recreation, I wanted to be as good as I could be in both, but wanted to definitely step kind of out of one and into the other, because that was I guess I kept my identity separate and not have an expectation on me because I was good at cricket that I would be good at work and vice versa, so which is pretty stupid when I look back now, because everyone just loves it, everyone's into it. So you don't work in the police without getting confronted. I mean, that's the other thing I should say for anyone who's thinking of joining. But I do believe it's the best job in the world. I do honestly believe you learn skills that you could sign up to every course at university, you'll never learn them. Because it's life-based learning, and it's hard and it's great. But it's something, and I believe a career, if you work hard, you see the rewards. So for me, there was some, a couple of key homicides that I really remember, because I felt like we did a really good job and we got a resolution for the family and that kind of thing early. And there's others where I was just frustrated, because when we finally got there, you thought, oh God, if we'd only done that. And that wasn't very often. And there's lots of ways you can kind of rewrite that in your head as well. It's often, there's no way you could have known or anything like that. So I worked on the Kahui twins homicide, which, so two babies, obviously twins, but they, and that was really hard, because and I think any cop will agree with me, when it's babies who can't speak, or and families can't or won't speak and tell you what happened, there's nothing more frustrating. So
how many were on the team for that sort of thing?
A lot of it depends who's available and how many others there are going on at the time, but you can have, on day one of an operation like that, you could have 50 people, and depending on what there needs to be done, the phone will ring at whatever, not much o'clock, and you're on to the station, and you kind of wait to hear will you be on suspects or area inquiries and that sort of thing, and then you kind of just get your jobs and off you go. And then what will normally happen is that group will kind of shrink over time as you kind of work through the work. So the idea is that you get as much done as you can early, and then people kind of break away as and when you can sort of start to see a way clear in the next step. So, but I mean, I worked on some great stuff as well. I definitely went to jobs where I saved people's lives. That's really rewarding. I mean, not many people get to say that. So it's
I don't think that should be glossed over either. Like that seems like quite a big deal.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate, obviously, what I'm talking about there, an example I remember is a suicide, but we got there in time, which was, a lot of things have to marry up for that to happen. And it's really hard for the family, and it's a hugely confronting scene, but and then you're like, well, I've got one job. I've got one job. And we managed on that occasion to intervene in enough time, and he got through. So, I'm trying not to gloss over. I'm just trying to keep the details,
of course.
I don't want to freak anyone out, but that sort of thing. You come to the end of your shift and you go, yeah, that's why I do the job.
Is that, if it's all right to ask about it?
Yeah.
In that situation, were you the one talking to the person who was suicidal? Like, are you trained in all these different aspects?
I mean, you do get a little bit of training as you go, but nothing can prepare you for when you get there. I was dealing with the guy's mum a little bit, and there's a lot going on. So I'm talking to her, and then I'm trying to help my partner out with what he's doing, and then there was a dog barking, and so there's a lot going on. But you're not 100% trained to like a forensic psychologist would be if they were there. So police are always generalists, and you apply your skills the best you can at the time, and that's why I think it's kind of one of the best jobs, because you learn, and you just use your instinct in those, and you don't always get it right either. Like something you can really rack someone up, and it goes completely pear-shaped, and like, oh, I could have done that differently. But you still get to, I think people they rely on you, like whether even people who don't traditionally like the police, they see what the police are there for and the role they have, and so there's usually a level of respect. And I kind of reflected, how people, it's quite a public sector thing, and actually it's everywhere, and they go, oh, tell me what your why is, and I always thought that was a bit kind of fluffy. I'm sort of like, well, probably, I don't know if I have one, but what I sort of reflected on is, for me, what I liked about that, and about any serious fraud office is the same, is that it's a real privilege. Like, you get to work with people who society think are the weakest. Like, so they could be really impoverished, or just have so many barriers in their way, and you work with them and you see them at their strongest. Like, it's a young girl or a prostitute, working with them through a rape trial or something like that, and you're like, whoa, okay, I would never have been able to do what you just did. So I'm super impressed. And then equally at the other end, you've got people who society think are the strongest, so they're wealthy and they're privileged and that sort of thing, but you've just told them that their son's been shot. And then you see them completely implode in front of you, and you're like, whoa, okay. Well, of course, no one's going to be strong in this situation, but you're allowed to be there and help them, when they're at their most vulnerable. And to me, you can never take that for granted. It's such a privilege, because you can make such a difference to those people in those moments. And it's the kind of thing where sometimes all they want is just someone to keep repeating the same thing, or to go make them a cup of tea or something like that. But it's you in that moment, and it's something you have to take really seriously.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's like problem solving, isn't it? I mean, my only reference for detectives is the movies. But I'm thinking about the Kahui twins case. You're trying to figure it all out. You must take that home. Do you take that home with you? Is it you sort of lying awake at night, trying to going over it in your mind, or turning to people turn to alcohol and things to get through? Like, is there a lot of that?
Well, I'm proud to say I don't think I did that too much. But yeah, you do. So like, it's kind of like being in sport, actually. Like, you're in your changing room and you've had a big heavy loss, and obviously I'm not trying to compare the two from a practical perspective, but you commiserate with your teammates, and you work through a couple of things, and you sort of, and you put it in perspective, and then you leave and you go home. And it's a bit the same at work. You rely on your teammates in your work environment to, you talk about it and you thrash it out. But you've also got to realise that people at home, they want you, they want a different version of you potentially. I mean, I've always been lucky and had a lot of support if I've needed it, but you also want to shelter them a little bit from, some of the rough and tumble of it all. So you might, not necessarily kind of go into too many details. But yeah, I think there's a lot of nowadays probably more people are much more open to reaching out for that support, whereas traditionally I think not in police is, I'm talking about police, is that you maybe were expected to be a bit tougher, but not so much these days, which, you know, the literature's everywhere. Police all around the world are much better at sort of supporting their people through that sort of thing.
That international sport aspect and unlimited time off for it is an interesting one, because when you said that, I had a flashback to being at the cricket in Seddon Park.
Yeah.
And Jenny May Coffin was a police officer then.
Yeah.
Was it quite prevalent in that sort of 90s, 2000s period for top athletes to then cross over into the police force? I think Amy Jean Rangitawa, as she was as well.
Yeah, there were a few, Blair Larson, John Gallagher, I'm going back in time, to All Blacks, pre-professional days. So an interesting comment, because there were a few back then who played sport and they were in the police, and you got unlimited time off. That soon changed to, I think, 20 days a year while I was still in the police, and I think some of that was because people were starting to get paid. And I remember really clearly getting an email when I applied for some leave at one point saying, well, hang on a minute, how much are you getting paid for your tour to wherever we were going to for the White Ferns? I must have laughed out loud. You know I'm a girl, right? But I think as some of the All Blacks started to, rugby players started to get paid, that became less and less of a possibility. I think I was trying to remember if I was talking to Katie Perkins recently about they might still have something for that. But actually most employees, like a serious fraud officer, amazing to me when I was playing football. There's certain steps you have to go through in the public sector to be able to get different types of leave, and so they worked with me to make sure I accessed what I was entitled to, but nothing more than that. And I was always grateful for that sort of thing. But it is, in the police it was sort of easy as well, because with shift work, you get a lot of days off, so you can kind of manage your training and amongst that. And I remember going into the 2000 World Cup, and we'd have these 5 weekly training camps for the White Ferns, and by some grace of God, they fell on my days off. So I didn't have to take any time off, which was ace, because I couldn't get time off for training, but I could get time off for the competition. So I was like, oh man, I needed 5 days, and you'd do 7 nights, and then you'd have 5 days off, and then you'd start early shift. So for those 5 days off, I'd be at camp, but of course you come off you finish work at 7 o'clock, hopefully, if it finishes on time. And then I'd jump on a plane that night. So I'd try and get as much sleep as I could, but then we'd land, and then you'd have kind of some team stuff. And I remember falling asleep so many times, and being so apologetic, and I missed a flight. Back in the days where, you'd get to the airport and you'd queue up for ages to check in, there was no apps or anything like that. And me and another teammate, Catherine Rammel, who didn't have an excuse, by the way, and she got there after me. But I had a power cut, and my good old clock radio had it gone off. And so I fanged it to the airport, but didn't make it on time. And Kate Sexton, who works at New Zealand Rugby now, she's a women's participation manager, I think. She was our manager, and she made us quite rightly stand up in front of everyone and apologise. And I've never been so embarrassed in my life. And anyone who knows me knows I hate being late. Yeah, that was quite traumatic, but...
It's interesting then, because I made a point of messaging Rebecca that you were going to be 3 minutes late.
Yeah.
8:33.
You did that. It was a busy night at work.
I feel like we actually got here at 8:33.
Bang on. I was like, whoa, that's some Siri magic or something. But yeah, no, so, the police were amazing with time off, and just an amazing kind of career. I had 10 years there. I could have easily stayed. But yeah, explored other things.
It's kind of going exactly how I thought, because there's so many different strands, and I'm trying to follow them at the same time to get some sort of linear progression.
Sorry, I'm going all over the place.
No, but it's great. It's exactly how I want it to be. But so 10 years at the police, and then you got your head turned by the serious fraud office. Was it a difficult decision to leave the police?
No, I actually went to the Ministry of Health for 18 months first, and did some worked in kind of the area that looks at funding fraud. So medical providers who commit funding fraud. So that was 18 months. And interesting, into an agency where investigation isn't their core business, and I rock up, just cold calling people left, right and centre going, hey, can you tell me about this? And they're like, who are you? So that was quite interesting, but quite a good introduction to a massive agency that wasn't police, but like a good core public agency. But I'd always wanted to work at the SFO, and so when a role came up there, I was like, okay, I need to put my hat in the ring for this, and thankfully they chose me. So yeah, and I was I think fraud for me was, so, you know, I've explained about some of the challenges and rewards in the police, but fraud was kind of something, I don't know, a bit more you could bury yourself in, you could really sink your teeth into it. It was a bit more cerebral than kind of being out on the beat and chasing drunks around, even though it could be fun.
Sorry about that again.
Kicking people out of your front lawn. I hope you rolled in some dog poop, because, you know.
I genuinely think I did. Oh god. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So so I kind of enjoyed the challenge of fraud a lot more, and the SFO is a really unique place because, I mean, it's the lead agency for serious fraud and corruption, which, you know, was something dear to my heart as well. And sorry, anti-corruption is dear to my heart, not let me be clear. And so I was kind of like, wow, this is the only place you can do that. It's the place to do it if you're going to do it well. And also you get to investigate alongside accountants and lawyers, so they get to do all that crap that no one really likes to do. And we do the fun stuff. So it's like best day ever.
I think I saw you on TV talking about a case.
Oh, yeah, you did. Yeah.
Did I?
Mm.
Yeah.
It was an ASB bank case, yeah.
Yeah. And that's when it was on TV. It's
yeah.
And that's when I was kind of like, because I think you, at that stage, were you back in football? I feel like you were.
Might have just started, actually.
Yeah, because I remember double taking, going, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
She's a football fern.
You could be about right. Yeah. I was trying to remember. It was one of those occasions where you're like, really, I have to do that.
But it's an interesting, and we're jumping everywhere. But I had this in my notes as well as asking about the second time around with the football ferns and going into that dressing room.
Yeah.
Where you're quite senior.
You can be honest. Yeah.
You're also working a very, very high-powered role, and the majority of your teammates are teens and early 20s, and they may be bringing in some different workplace, if they are working, problems to the dressing room, and you've got some quite heavier ones. Was that refreshing?
Totally. Yeah, it was. I mean, quite daunting. So I don't know if Maya coughed to you, but it's her fault probably, in that she bugged me my whole cricket career to come back and play football. But having seen, I think I mentioned the 2011 World Cup, looking at the goalkeeping standard and going, wow, they're all short, and I'm obviously tall, and they're not that good. Like, football had really progressed, but goalkeeping hadn't, from what I could see there. So I was like, I still might be able to do this. And my partner at the time, she said, well, let's sit there and talk about it. Just go and, ring Maya. She's been bugging you for how many years now? Just go and see what you can do. I was like, I wouldn't be interested. And I'll just embarrass myself. And she's like, well, you can do that. You can embarrass yourself, or you can never know. So then it can become one of those things where, like, oh, now I've said that, I have to do it. I did get hold of Maya, and she set up a meeting with Tony Reddings and Simon Eadie, who was the goalie coach at the time, who I knew from Waikato. So it was kind of comfortable. And they said, yeah, look, we'll take you for a 6-week trial. I was like, oh, okay, well, all right. And it was so daunting because I knew Maya, but other than that, nobody. And I knew them from having watched football, and I knew, they were bloody good. But certainly didn't know how they'd react to me. But it was so funny that they couldn't have given a crap. Like, they were just, there's another new girl, with people coming in all the time. I don't think anyone took stock and went, how old is she?
Just to paint the picture for those who might be getting a little bit lost. At this point, you were 36, I think. Yeah. You'd played 100 games for the White Ferns, and your last game for the Football Ferns was 16 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've come back, which is just incredible, 16 years after your last game, to reappear on the scene. Like, in that dressing room, you say they didn't really care who you were. Did they know that you...
Not a clue. No. Mine's free.
And some of them weren't born when you played for the Football Ferns the first time around, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know if that's an unfair exaggeration, but
I think you're probably right. And on the odd Gary Connell compiled PowerPoint, there would be some old footage in it, like, you bastard. And there'll be there, like, she played her first game in 1990, whatever it was. And
was it 94?
Yeah.
I like how you've said 1990, whatever it was, and as soon as said 4, you're like, yeah, I do know what it is.
I do, yeah. So plenty of them weren't born then. And then I think I had a moment towards the end of my career when I had a birthday, and someone else goes, oh, it's so-and-so's birthday as well. And she was literally the same day as me, but 20 years younger.
God.
Like, okay, I think this could be my last Olympics. And it's been everyone's last Olympics.
Yeah.
So, it was, really refreshing because there's no expectations. And, I went in going, they're going to wonder what the hell I'm doing here. I'm so much older, but I don't know if they didn't look close enough or just didn't really care. It's probably more to the point. They're all really welcoming. There's obviously a kind of, a process when people came into the group. Everyone welcomed them and got to know them, took the time. And because there was a group that I sort of joined that had been together since they were young, it was sort of an under-20s team that went to Russia, and they were the core, and they still are the core of the football ferns. Like, it was just kind of another one's coming on the bus sort of thing. So yeah, I think for some of them, like, I must have played with some of them for 2 or 3 years before they realised how old I was, because they just never asked and didn't care. And then sometimes I could see, like, I'd try and sort of make small talk about whatever we're up to, and I'd say, I've got this thing going on at work, and this thing.
That's the part that fascinates me.
Yeah.
So I've got this assignment due on an accounting assignment.
I've got my exam, so the big stress for a lot of these girls was the SATs for the college, and I'd start getting nervous. I'm like, man, that sounds really hard.
Little do they know that you're solving or working through these complex.
Oh yeah, but everyone loves a good crime story, so they kind of put me in the movies like you do. So I was happy with that.
I can relate to that strongly. I played Northern Premier League football last year as the oldest person in the team in Hamilton, top team in Hamilton. And I went to a few sort of parties at the flats, and there's like a bunch of 19-year-old kids, and I go and have a couple of drinks. And one night they were doing initiations, and they went around and everyone had to scull a beer and do a shot or something, if it was your first year in the team. And they came to me, and some of the young boys go, "Oh, Steve, you got to do your initiation." I was like, "Do you know when I did my initiation? 2001. They were like, "Oh, that's the year I was born. Are you shitting me?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I've been around for a while."
Yeah.
But your decision to come back seemed like a great one, because you went to 2 Olympics and a World Cup after coming back. This might be a bit of a shit question, but I know the goalkeepers union is quite a tight group.
Very tight. Yeah.
And so coming back as a 36-year-old who had essentially given the game away 16 years ago, did that mean someone else missed out on a spot to those big tournaments? And was that something that weighed into your thinking to come back?
I don't think... Well, 2 questions. Did someone miss out? Well, probably, because they only take a certain amount. Did it weigh into my thinking? I only really knew Jenny Bindon, who was the goalkeeper at the time. Excellent goalkeeper, good, really great 7 of the White Ferns, just good all-rounder, really. So I knew that she was the incumbent, and whether or not I'd get close to her, I wouldn't know until I gave it a go. So that was kind of my thought process. And through that time, there was her and me and Erin Naylor, who's now obviously the goalie now, and Erin was very young. And the 3 of us pretty much just rolled. There was people that sort of joined us from time. Lily Alfield, who's part of the setup now, she was around for a bit, sort of through the midway. I'm trying to think, anyone else came on tours. Kushla Chwak came to Canada for the World Cup. She was an ex-netballer.
Who's a netballer as well.
It is a tight union. And one that it's great to be a part of, in no shape, because it's not like you hear stories about professional football setups where, the top goalie just gets crap service at trainings because no one likes him because he wins too much. So we don't have any of those problems. It's kind of like, if you just don't want to fail, and you've got Danny Robinson kind of booting balls at you, the bravery drill is a great one.
Can you, a little interlude, I don't think he did it justice on his episode, but what is the Danny Robinson bravery drill look like?
All right, so he lines, I'm going to say, it must be 8 or 10 balls up on the 6-yard line, just, maybe a metre or 2 apart. And you are not allowed to come off your line. You have to just face up to these balls that are all very, very close range. And he just pumps them at you one after, and like rips right along the line. And the idea is that you don't kind of flinch and kind of cower and that sort of thing. So you have to maintain, you try to keep your hips front on and be the biggest presence you can be. And for whatever reason, I think I'm someone who's blessed with good reaction time, or none. I don't know. It could be both. I just stood there and got hit. Both have happened in my career. I would just be like, and maybe also because I'm quite, tall frame. I'm like, there's nowhere else to be here. So I would like front up and kind of bump them away quite well. And I remember we were in St. Louis we were playing the States, obviously, and he had to look at a young guy who was over there as a Kiwi, so they were sort of scouting for the talent, and he lined this poor guy up to do this drill. Who'd never seen it before. So it does help if you've seen it at the very least before. And it was horrible. Like the poor guy, I think he was about 16 or 17, pretty good goalie, but had never had this. And Danny was just pumping these balls, and I'm going, I don't give a shit about your bollocks. Stop covering them up. Be brave. You've seen her do it, and completely belittles the guy, who I hope has a good long goalie career, because he was pretty good. But yeah, it was, and so those sorts of things like that, they're quite, they're quite cohesive across the group. And Erin was, I mean, when she first started, and she got so much better, as you all do, but she was a bit more probably flinchy, but she got really, really good at it. So it's quite nice to see those progressions as well. But it's, like I say, it's a sport within a sport. The way I approach it, and I can't speak for every goalie, but I don't approach it to be the best reserve goalie I can be. I approach it to be the best goalie, and if that means I nudge someone out of the spot, then great. If I don't, then if they have to come off or something goes wrong, then I'll be there. But equally as important that you're putting yourself forward for anything that needs to happen at training, in the small sided games and the subs trainings and that kind of thing. Like, you don't just want to be the also ran, you want to actually make the team work for, get training outcomes as well. So it's it's always frustrating if you don't play, and I didn't play a lot the second time round, but yeah, it's still really rewarding because you can actually contribute.
At that stage of your life too, you must appreciate where you are a lot more than if you were in your early 20s or teens. You're at 2 Olympics and a World Cup.
Yep.
Not great not to be starting, like you say, but still, you're at an Olympics. This is it, Yeah,
it's funny because I don't think anyone who's played international sport hasn't been annoyed with the selection decision in their life, and I'm certainly no stranger to that. There were times when I thought I should have played. Every footballer will say that, and I'm no exception. But I think actually you have to. It's only one person's decision. You can't say you're wrong because they're not. It's their opinion. That's the job they're given, and you have to just get on with it. And you can have a couple of choices. You can sulk, or you can be annoyed about it, or you can just turn up and get on with it. And you're going to have more fun doing the second thing. It's but yeah, blessed to have gone to those sorts of events. The World Cup in Canada was such a weird sort of event. It was on turf, not great for a goalie. But and Shay, you're in London, so you'll know, but compared to Rio, a completely different experience. And look, Tokyo it'll be what it'll be, but it'll be different again. So to have gone to 2 Olympics, I never would have at 35. Or if you'd said that, I would be like, whatever.
Have you got any great bumping into famous people at Olympic stories? We had Emma talking about Ronaldinho and the lines of McDonald's.
Some funny looking guy.
Actually, funny, Christy Hill. She managed to scope out a lot of. She's got, I think, her Facebook profile is still a photo with Kevin Garnett. Sorry, I'm going to get shot for saying that. I was always fascinated by the basketball women, like particularly the Chinese and the Australian. They were so tall. And as a tall woman anyway, when I see someone like that, I'm like, I might just sidle up to them and kind of, really get a sense of it. No, I'm just trying to think. No, I don't have any stories I can probably repeat on a podcast.
That's a safe space.
No.
It's funny you say that. I went to college in America, and we had a guy on our basketball team who was the exact same dimensions as Shaq, like height and weight.
I'm going to say Shay.
And I would do the same thing. I would walk up to him on campus, and I'd just go and stand, just walk beside him for a little bit, just to I don't know, to appreciate how large the human form can be.
The Olympic food hall is just a social experiment in
How good.
itself. Like, you
So
can
much
just
fun.
sit there and watch, right? Just the amount some people eat, I'm like, whoa.
The athletes as well.
Totally. Not just the hangers on.
Not just support staff.
All right, let's recycle back because we've sort of skipped over 100 odd games for the White Ferns. And I want to hone in on 2000 because you won the World Cup. In the final, you'd lost the last two. The White Ferns had lost the last two finals. You're in the World Cup final. There's this huge swelling of public interest. There's a big crowd. Was it 10,000 there in Christchurch?
The Lincoln, yeah.
And it's the last
I remember
over.
it vividly as well. I remember watching it on TV.
What was your recollection?
Here's an interesting thing, and it's a completely personal, and I'll have to ask you off microphone afterwards, but this is a completely personal recollection of it, is Claire Nicholson, she have a twin sister?
Yes.
Sue.
I think that might be her name, yeah.
So Sue Nicholson won the women's doubles in Taupo with my mum
Wow.
in 1995. And
Wow.
I just always remember, like, I used to buzz that this woman that played tennis with my mum at the local tennis club, her sister, like, bowled the ball
Yeah, she did, yeah.
that won the World Cup. And I kind of had this weird fascination with the White Ferns through that whole period, and it kind of culminated in that 2000 tournament. And I remember getting caught up in the game. It was replayed during COVID, I'm pretty sure, and it kind of got a whole second life to it. But that iconic sporting moment is kind of etched in.
Yeah, give us a picture of where your life was at that point. What you were working, and this was on the side, but it was this huge thing, and how important was it to you? And talk us through that period.
It was funny. I was working. I was 25 years old. And I'd kind of thought after the World Cup I might think about joining the CIB, becoming a detective, because I've been in a whole 2 years out of college, probably even only 18 months, but you know, it's a long process, so I think I'll start turning my mind to that. Going into the World Cup, I was part of the previous one in India that we'd lost at Eden Gardens in front of about 80,000 people, which blew my mind. It was crazy. And sort of leading in, we had, it was going to be a home World Cup, so that was exciting. But and the whole thing was based out of Lincoln University, and the whole thing was organised by Catherine Campbell, who was one of our team members, who was working at New Zealand Cricket, still works at New Zealand Cricket, is probably one of the leading kind of fixture logistics people across the global cricket community. She's very well respected and probably one of the more senior people in that. She organises this whole thing off the back of a notebook she keeps in her pocket, and we got this amazing sponsorship from Cricinfo, who were some internet company or something. And they were going to live score it, and we're like, cool. And then someone says, "What's live scoring?" And then of course they can punch it out on the computer. So it was all very like razzle dazzle, but you look back now, it wasn't. But hey, we were just into it, and we had a really good series leading in with England, who weren't that great at the time, but we had a good series against them. And the Aussies we'd beaten the year before in the Rose Bowl, which had never happened, and actually still hasn't since. But that was quite a coup for us. So we're kind of like, if I'm honest, we're like, well, got as much chance as anyone, let's get into it. But I think I talked to her about Kate Sexton, who Matt Sexton, the Crusader, so she's his wife, obviously, and they were she'd been in Christchurch, she played netball, high level netball. She turned up one day as our manager, and she had this vision and the strategy, and we were like, who is this woman? But I think she's quite cool, and she kind of all folded us into this. We were the Ferns, and we were a part of the Fronds, and it was probably my first introduction to strategy across the board, and it was kind of in the absence of anything else. We were like, oh yeah, okay. This sounds cool, and the team was quite a good mix of elder statesmen, and it sounds disrespectful, but you've senior legends, I should call them, and we won't call them anything else, and then young upstarts like me, and then Hayley Tiffin, who was even younger, and a couple of others. So I don't think we realised how good we were, and we'd approached it probably with a little bit of an expectation that Aussie would get the better of us, but we might get close, and you only got to win one game. And we played them in the first round and lost fairly badly, I think. I just started opening the batting for the White Ferns, which was a bit of a challenge for me, but it was sort of something I was quite pleased to do because I just wanted to bat. And at that point, I was stuck at sort of number 7 or 8. Kind of sometimes a good at bat, depending on Debbie and how she was batting, which was usually pretty good. Yeah. So didn't get much of a go. And then if she got out, then Emily went in, and she stayed in even longer. So it was quite a cool time, really. But we I think it's one of those, it's a real example of momentum in a tournament. So we lost the first game, and then after that, to be fair, I mean, there weren't the best teams in the world. At that time, it was us, Australia, India, and England, and that was it pretty much. And as it turned out, South Africa snuck in ahead of England into the semis. But we sort of knew we'd pretty much win everything up until probably the semis. India on a good day can be problematic, but you want to bat first because then they choke and not like today. But yeah, so that all went completely to plan, except for losing the first game. And then, yeah, turns up, guess who we're playing? It's kind of like, oh yeah, we're all here again, and then the same people staring at us in yellow shirts that we've been playing against for a while now. So did it feel like a World Cup? Yeah, I think so. By that point, it felt different. You had all the other teams around. We all had our families there. It was a bit of a village boutique.
Yeah, were you getting
atmosphere.
attention from people who otherwise hadn't really paid much attention to women's sport?
Totally. I think it was all about timing. There probably wasn't much else happening at the time. I think it's a world tournament. ICC obviously involved. So
A few days before Christmas, right?
yeah, I think the final was on the 20th. And so yeah, there was, and we'd had some.
Good knowledge, by the way.
Yeah, nice one.
Thank you.
We'd had other coaches come in. John Reed, may he rest in peace, recently passed away. He came and joined our ranks, and he brought a lot. And so yeah, it was a different feeling. And Mike Shrimpton, who was our coach at the time, was a legend of New Zealand cricket and CD cricket, and just a passionate workhorse of a guy who probably the first coach that ever said, just bat, just hit it. You love to hit it, just do that. Just do it. So yeah, I think, and also what we knew also was the last games for the likes of Debbie and Catherine and Claire, and a couple of others that probably weren't going to, Katrina Keenan. So probably I would still say one of the best teams New Zealand's put out, and we didn't realise it, which was sad, but maybe just as well, because maybe our expectations weren't high enough, or they were just right for us to succeed on the day, I suppose.
Yeah. So Aussie set a total of like 180.
184.
184. And then fast forward to the last over.
Yeah.
And then you playing a major role.
Well, it was Johnny on the spot, wasn't I?
How much did you know about it at the time?
How much do I know about?
The catch.
Oh, it's funny. I think.
How much is instinctive and how much is yep?
Hang on. Let's set the scene. So they need
Keeper,
five runs off the last over.
Yep.
Was it?
Yep.
Yep. And first ball, taking a long time to set the field. You're standing up.
Yep. Off spinner. So what had happened first is, I think Emily had told Haiti she was bowling, and then thankfully, sorry Haiti, Catherine Campbell came and said, Claire's got one more. Give it to her. Or just Claire's got one more. I'm not sure which it was, but all of a sudden that was a way better decision, and obviously it was. So that's what kind of for some of that time. Yeah, and Claire's an off spinner, so yeah, I was keeping up to the stumps. I remember thinking, I can't really keep back. I can't really stand back.
Yeah, I want to, but no, it would be a terrible look.
Yeah, exactly right. No, because I had been keeping back because the runs were so tight. Like Catherine Rammell, who was an in-swinger, who I always kept up to, I'd kept back in a couple of the earlier overs because I'm like, we just don't have the runs. And she sometimes sprays it a little bit down the leg side. And she did that and nicked the leg stump bail of Catherine Fitzpatrick, which was the wicket before the last one. Right. There was all sorts of controversy because Fitzpatrick thought we'd kicked the bail off, and I was like, well, I'm standing back here. Legs aren't that long, sort of thing. And yeah, it was one of those weird games where just stuff kept happening. It was probably one of the first games we had a camera. So, but of course, no decent camera angles or frames or anything. It was just, you can have another look at that. So there was a lot of the third umpire going on that I'm not sure we kind of anticipated, but anyway, it worked in our favour, I think. But yeah, so
anyway, so she's standing at the top of her mark.
Yeah.
Talk us through.
Well, so Charmaine Mason, who's on strike, is the number 10, fearsome bowler. So they'd already bowled, so I thought I can say anything I like.
Yeah, are you a sledger?
I'm not a sledger. Well, unless someone's either, sort of rubbed me up a bit, which didn't happen very much, or, No, I'm just not, because I think I can never think of something to come back with.
Yeah. You'll have one for them, but if they come back, I'm out.
Or they just, or you're like, it'll bite me on the ass, and I was like, this is not a time to try and have a sledge and get bitten on the ass when the weight of the World Cup's on your shoulders. So, but I remember feeling really calm, like going, well, shit, no one really expects us from this point. It's, you're tossing a coin, aren't you? You're like, well, we might win, we might not, but who really knows? And I remember saying to Charmaine Mason, like, this is a bit intense. She wouldn't answer me. Understandable. She's like, you think you know what intense is. So all I was thinking is full and straight. You have to bowl full and straight because that's where the field's set. And you do that. I don't think, she's got to get 5 runs. It's going to be hard. She's going to have to play across the line. You bowl full and straight. You'll probably, you keep the wickets in play. You'll be fine. She'll either have to block it or take a risk. Sound. So she bowls a short, wide piece of rubbish. And I'm sorry, Claire, and I know I've said sorry before for saying that. She will agree. And then Charmaine Mason must have thought all her Christmases had come at once. It was Christmas. And kind of went back to cut it, and it just bounced on her because Claire's quite tall. And got this massive, enormous edge. But yeah, it was funny. It was one of those ones I don't think keeping up, you'll know, Steve, that, often it's, you have to train to be in the right position to have your gloves, soft enough and open enough to make it stick if it's going to stick. And it was right before they changed that, the rules about the webbing. So now you can, if you have your thumb and your forefinger completely outstretched, you can't have any like pleating, or it can't be it's got to be a straight line.
I didn't know that. The last time I wicket kept, I had that.
Yeah, well, so it changed not long after 2000.
Yeah.
And so then you see the footage, and there's this ball pouched in this perfectly round little cup.
Yeah.
It just went bananas. I just was like, it's stuck. Oh, she's out. Oh, we've won. It was all, and then I threw the ball away, which I'll always regret. And Guy Havel tweeted me saying, my brother picked the ball up, and then some dude stood over him and got it off him. Yeah. Which always a bit of a shame because, if you want anything from that game, it's the ball. But it was then just complete bedlam from there. I remember my sister and my mum were at the game, and the next thing I remember is my sister just picked me up and hurled me around and screamed something in my ear. And then we just got completely invaded. And it was...
There's 2 things about that celebration that stand out.
I know you're going to say.
Well, one of them was from Maya, but the other one was you threw the ball up in the air, and then it seemed I was watching some replays of it. It just looked like it never come down. It's just like what happened to that ball? It's just kind of gone. But the other one was what Maya said is that you sort of went to celebrate.
Yeah.
With the bowl.
With Claire.
Claire, and she's sort of just ducked you and gone off in a different direction.
She wants to get a stump.
We'll
get stumps.
How's that the thought process? We just won the World Cup.
Yeah.
Celebrate with my keeper. No.
Straight
for the stump.
Yeah,
I don't want anyone to get that.
In fact, there's 29 million of them because we've been using them all tournament. Yeah. And I've still got mine. Like we all got given one. But I still get crap about that today. And you mentioned it was played over COVID, so the entire team on that day is on a Facebook group, which is great and hilarious. So we're all watching it, and I feel like there's a bit of imbibing that went on, for sure. And it was just like being in the changing room, like the same lippy people were piping up again and again and again, and then every now and then Catherine would come in and say something and the whole room would go quiet, because she's hilarious. And then Debbie refused to watch herself back. She goes, I'm going to mow the lawns. I'm not going to watch this. Because her innings was quite tough for her. Yeah. Thanks to me for getting out. Yeah. And it was a really good day. And then at the end of it, we had to somebody challenged us all to playing a cricket shot and videoing it and sending it around. And so I couldn't get out of it, so I did it. But I used a can of hairspray. First mistake, and was playing some ridiculous shot, but I flipped the can, so I was holding up.
You don't have a cricket bat on site?
Oh, it's one in my car. But no, I was trying to just get this over and done with. And so I went through the motions of the shot, but I was holding the hairspray can by the plastic lid, and the whole can, it was a full can of, a lot of hair. Flew off, completely gouged out the wall.
Oh, no. All on camera?
Yep.
Did you post it?
On the page, yeah.
Oh, good.
As far as it goes.
Yeah,
so it's since been repaired, but it was... but I mean, just an amazing day. It was kind of, none of us, I think it just crept up on us how big it was. I've since chatted to a couple of the Aussies, and they were like, we just got complacent. Like we were just so used to it, and they were good. I think we were probably about the same, but they just were like, they'd not battered anyone other than their top 3, and we, thanks to Helen Watson, got Karen Rolton out really cheaply, and then Belinda Clark, who probably should have saved the game. Well, I'm sure she would say that, but she can't do everything. Claire got her out, so once they'd gone, we're like, oh, okay, there's a game on here. And we've been so used to those two. And personally, I've been so sick of standing behind the two of them, getting runs for fun. And then all of a sudden, they were just under the pump. And it was, it's good. It was a good spectator sport. I think the only regret I have, well, it's not mine, but is that we didn't play for 18 months after that. All of that momentum and interest, because everyone tells me where they were that day. Even now, like, I was walking past, I don't know, it wouldn't have been JB Hi-Fi then, it would have been Decca or something. It was on the TVs in the window and we were all crowded around outside, or I was at the airport, or I was at the gym, and it was, everyone tells me where they were that day.
How do you celebrate winning a World Cup?
Well, I've only got one experience. It's funny, we didn't, we had a dinner to go to, I think, so you kind of had to keep it pretty low. I think we just did a lot of reflecting. We knew, for me, it meant so much to me that to see Catherine Campbell sink to her knees and just throw her head back and go, yes, because she had been part of a couple of, probably more than two, unsuccessful campaigns. It was Debbie's last game, what a goat. She's just, to even play with her, I still think I can't believe it. And even though she hated her innings that day because it was not a classic Debbie Hockley, it was so important because she just had to guts it out and stay there while the rest of us were throwing our wickets away. It meant a lot to me to sit in the changing room with those guys and just talk and laugh. And Katrina, who is such a weapon opening bowler for us, she wasn't going to play again. And Claire Claire doesn't say a lot. She's very very reserved, but such a key part. And all those people had. It was harder for them to make it to that point. They'd all, they were sort of where I was when I started playing football again. They were like, I've got a career to go to and a family to have and that sort of thing. So, we know the guts that they had pulled out. And it was one of those teams where, and I sort of say the same about the football ferns when I was in it. So the fitness and everything everyone does, they do it not because they have to fill out a form or they're getting paid or anything like that. They do it because everyone else is doing it and no one wants to let anyone else down, and I'm not sure every sports team can say that, like particularly in the professional era. But it was obviously I'm shut up about it, so it must be one of the best days of my life.
Well, you played for another 7 years, I think, international cricket after that. Did anything, I know the answer is no, but did anything come close to repeating those scenes? And once you'd achieved that, was it harder to get back up for the next one, to defend it?
It wasn't harder to get back up, but you totally, like when you win a World Cup in 2000 and you're 25, you expect to win everything from that point, which is, I probably should have thought that through a bit more, but it was quite hard because then you turn up and you've got to rebuild the team and some wicked young talent coming through, and but there were some highs and lows. Other teams were getting better. England had started to get really invested in, as did India, so they weren't, the easy results that we'd always relied on. It used to just be we'd play Australia and just battle it out with them. So things changed. I had some amazing experiences, some great tours. We started touring a lot more, which was good. I picked up a couple of hundreds along the way, which was hugely satisfying personally, but also, I guess proved to myself as a batsman, which I had doubted a little bit through some of the points of my career. And really, I think from a wicket-keeping perspective, I got so much better after that World Cup. I learned so much. It's one of the those skills that you have to keep evolving as bowlers come and go and pitches get better. You have to keep sort of progressing that part of your game. So way more satisfaction. But eventually, kind of was I need to go and have a career.
And was that the reason why you walked away from cricket?
Yeah, it was. It was a little bit about I felt I probably wasn't performing. It's weird, Like no cricketer ever performs. Even Kohli, Lanning, Devine, Williamson, none of them will hand on heart say they performed to their potential. So I felt like I wasn't. And I guess I played the game in a way that was really high risk and reckless. And nowadays that's what you do. And I played 2 T20s, but we didn't really know how to play a T20. It was kind of like the thing you did at the start to sort of get the cobwebs out. It was a bit of fun, and if the Aussies agree to it, then we'll do it. So we played the first one ever in England at Brighton, and then we played another one against Australia at Allan Border Oval, which was a bowl off. Ridiculous. In hindsight, and I always get teased about this from Susie Bates, is that I probably should have hung around a bit longer and seen out that T20 a bit more.
Could you do a job now?
Have you been talking to Susie Bates? She's always saying you can get one season at the Sparks. You can do it.
I did watch that that other podcast, which you did bring it up.
That's right. Yeah,
But could you?
no, look. You look at it and you go, oh yeah, I'd play this shot. Why don't they do that? And you know, as a commentator, you work through those processes in your head. And I certainly am jealous of the boundaries and the bats and the pitches that the girls have now. But not jealous in a, oh, that's not fair, but in a, man, I wish I had that. It was kind of, like the game needs that, don't get me wrong. Like the longer we have those, the more the game will progress exponentially. But I think a little part of me wouldn't mind having a hit, but I suspect it would go. I'd drop the ball. Yeah.
There's no twilight cricket. You're not taking a 12-pack down to the local oval and whacking a few over the boundary.
I always think it'd be really fun to just turn up somewhere anonymously, and just
smash it.
No, well, I don't mind rolling out for a club team and you know, just kind of go, bat at number 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, and just have a hit and see what happens. And
it's just Maya's mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, just Debbie's mate. Someone.
Exactly right.
Just to zoom out on your sort of sporting career as a whole, I've got to ask my favourite question. I'm going to make it a two-parter. Do you think you fulfilled your potential as a sportswoman? And is there anything you would change about the way you went about it? The split, the football, the cricket, the football again?
I would probably played cricket a bit longer and gone back to football a bit earlier. I think then I might have given myself more of a chance of playing more for the football ferns, as in getting picked. And I think, I would agree with Susie to an extent that I probably called a time on cricket a bit early and shut that door. So, but then also, I don't know, you say that it's really, it's quite one-dimensional, but then you're like, but then what else would I have missed out on along the way from a career perspective or from a family or experience perspective? So I don't think you can have too many regrets. Potential filling, no way, I don't think. I mean, if you get someone on a podcast that goes, I nailed it, I'll be pretty impressed. Yeah. Actually, you probably will. I'm trying to think who that'll be. There'll be heaps of legends. But I'm not one of them. Absolutely. I know I frustrated some of my teammates, particularly in cricket, throwing my wicket away, playing a brand of the game that, like I say, now it's a lot more acceptable, but probably would have liked to have just kind of learned a bit more about myself earlier so that I made that more of a threat than a gamble. Probably, I would say. But, I mean, you then go, well, man, I went to 3 Cricket World Cups, won one of them, Football World Cup, a couple of Olympics. You're like, can't really complain.
It's a pretty impressive CV.
It's a great platform for broadcasting too, because you want to move into your commentary stuff as well. Is that something that you thought you would be doing? And how did that opportunity come up?
It's like I think... And you guys will be the same. You sit on the couch and you commentate anyway, right? You use a few more choice words probably. I always thought I'd love to do it, but never. It just wasn't something that had come my way. But I really love it. I think it's really good. It's quite a test. You kind of have to dust your cricket nous off a little bit, understand the game's changed, and try and kind of keep up with it. But also really get amongst it and learn, what the players are thinking and that kind of thing. It's I first got into it through Emily Drum, who was working for Sky at the time, and said, "Oh, would you be keen to come and do some games?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't really know what I'm doing." So you'd be fine. So you kind of come and just jump in, and then obviously the changeover, and off the back of that, got a call from Alex Lewis at Spark, and they were assembling a team, and he, from talking to him, he was quite deliberate about it. He was really careful in saying, this is the kind of vibe I want to create and that kind of thing. So it wasn't, are you available? It's, how does this sound to you, and do you want to be a part of it? And be honest if you don't. And I'm like, no, that sounds pretty cool. And he nailed it in terms of the personnel. I know Scotty talked about it a bit, but really good balance. The guys, I think you just got you kind of got one of every character in the team. You've got Mark Richardson, who's always the pantomime villain, but he's hilarious and really good on the fly. He's quite interesting to work with because sometimes he says nothing for 4 balls, and you're like, should I be? Yeah. And he's he's dreaming something up, so you kind of just tick it along in the meantime. And Scotty's he's a expert broadcaster. Brendan, Craig, all the Craigs and Stephen, their playing experience. Like I sit there and listen to those guys forever, and Brendan in particular, all of them are really inclusive. Like they'll say, "Hey Bex, you say this," and then I'll come in with that, and so it gives you a lot of confidence, particularly when you're commentating guys cricket. To make sure that you're doing it justice, and you sort of also I think trying to pave a way for other people. There's Frankie Mackay's really skilled and really impressive in that space, so she's kind of a bit of a pioneer. But people like Deb and Maya Lewis did a bit to start with, but you want to create the space for other people to come through. I mean, Katie Martin's another one who's obviously you'll see a lot more of, and Susie, by virtue of injury, she had a fair few games as well, so it's really enjoyable, a really good vibe, and I think kind of a nice time to be involved in cricket, and really lucky with COVID and everything that we got a season in New Zealand, and it was really cool to be a part of it, and all the teams we had coming through, just so amazing.
I feel like based on the last 80 minutes, you would be someone who would be super prepared for your commentary. Are you doing sheets of research? You're like, what's your prep?
Guilty.
What's your prep look like?
Yeah, different to Brendan McCullum's, that's for sure. I mean, it is particularly with guys cricket. When you some of the girls, so it's easy to kind of you get a lot of through osmosis and that sort of thing. But with the guys, you want to be a bit more involved. The Super Smash is great with the double headers. Like you're in amongst it and that sort of thing. You're learning a lot. You get invested in the competition and the table and everything like that. So but I'm someone who, if I went in having done nothing, I think even though you can still just sit there and call what you see and be absolutely fine, you just want that one little thing for that gap where you're like, how about, remember when he did this, or by the way, he's these are his stats. I think I feel a bit more comfortable going in. It's
a pretty great sort of part-time gig, isn't it? Something that you would be doing anyway, watching these games, like you say, commentating on your couch.
Yeah,
you're getting paid to do it amongst these sort of amazing personalities.
Yeah, exactly right. It's again another privilege, but also just fun. I think, and it's interesting, like the difference. I guess this now that it's streamed, you have a different audience to think about, and they were really clear on that, saying we want to be we're inviting into people's homes. We're going to be free to air, and for me, I mean, you remember. That's why I played cricket, is because it was free to air. So to not have that for 30 years, I hate to think how many people we missed out on. Because were it not for me, and I probably half the reason I batted like I did is because I just used to watch Richard Hadley plonk his foot down the pitch and swing. To bring that back and hear people, and like my mum's a really good example. So got her Spark Sport, and she's a boomer, and that's a lot of people who sometimes struggle with the Sky versus Spark.
We've got a friend like that who's not a boomer but still struggles with that technology.
We've all got those friends. No, but my mum's casting off her iPad. She thinks she's the nuts. It's she's like, it's so easy. I don't know why anyone's got a problem. But she's a representative of the kind of the widening of the demographic, and you just want to demonstrate this what I think is one of the best sports. Well, it's probably first equal best sport in the world.
Yeah.
So did you? You've alluded to it, but growing up listening to the Channel 9 commentary team with
totally.
Richie Beno and all those, did you do the 12th man tapes
a little bit
as well?
Yeah, I did when I could get hold of them, when I was allowed to listen to them. I did with that. And it's funny, even now you'll hear us saying things that commentators have been saying for 40 years. Like I always get teased if I keep saying on this occasion, and those little pundity habits. Mate,
I've been getting hammered on the podcast for the same phrases. One of them is amazing, which I've caught myself saying a few times tonight.
Yeah.
On a school night.
Yeah.
And I've been so focused on not saying it's getting late on a school night that it's all I can think about.
You get one word in your head, you can't get it out.
Yeah, I did famously for a while there, and nothing I've ever done is famous. Or I've done a little bit of this, that. So those are mine. The patter of cricket commentary versus calling play-by-play football.
Yeah, harder. Yeah.
Is it that much difficult when you're sitting in the box?
I think football is, a lot of it depends on, because you comment in football, you'll know what you've got in front of you. And cricket's a little bit better set up in that respect. So my experience, or a couple of the times I've commentated football in some of the more local games, you're on a bit of scaffolding. and everything's taped down, and you've got your packet of jet planes, which is great, and one screen. And so trying to call that is different. So I tend to call from the actual play, whereas with cricket I'll call off the monitor because there's just so much more detail going on there, and it's it's a bit hard from 50, 60 metres away as well. But they're both quite different. I've only ever been colour for football, so doing that with Andrew Dewhurst or Gordon or one of those real pros, so they make it really easy to kind of come in. And I've got to admit, I talk the goalkeepers up, when they do something amazing. We get really critical about the corners and who's where and who's doing what. In the midfield, I'm not so worried, but so yeah, they are quite different, but you kind of get into the swing of things and try to bring maybe something that's a bit more personal about the players, or kind of build up the profiles a bit more so that people actually understand, and can kind of latch on to something like that.
I'm getting towards the end of my my extensive notes that Shay's helped me provide. Last thing I wanted to touch on for me was your new job. So you're having a bit of a change of direction once again. What's your new role and what does it involve? Yeah,
so 5 July I start with Sport New Zealand, leading the diversity and inclusion work there. So that's hugely exciting change for me. I mentioned earlier I kind of kept sport and career separate, so this is probably the first divergence of those things. So one of the reasons it's exciting, but also I think that space, there's been some excellent work Sport New Zealand have done with the Women and Girls program and disability and kicking off the inclusion work. So really, and just probably quite a cool time to be in that space. I mean, I think, I've got lived experience, and I touched earlier on some of the ways I felt excluded, and being a woman, that was one of my barriers, but there are so many others that, I would hate to think someone wasn't playing sport because they either didn't feel like they could or couldn't afford to or something like that. So I think, huge challenge, but important kaupapa.
It seems like this incredible journey just keeps gathering momentum. What is the dream job for Rebecca Rolls?
Good question. I'm not 100%. Like I've kind of always been one of those people who doesn't like to set goals. Like I'm kind of like, don't limit yourself. Like just see what opportunities come your way. So I think for me, and I wouldn't rule out, later on heading back into some sort of public sector leadership role, back to kind of where I am now, sort of thing as well. So I think anything where I get to kind of do that, helping people at their weakest be strong and vice versa. I think that's probably something I'd always be looking for in some form. If that's in sport, I think I'll be really happy. But also, as I said, there's timing and other people want those jobs as well. So it's probably for me just something where I get to contribute to, my nieces and their future and what, making sure they've got all the options they can have, and if that would be through sport, then I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Shay, how are we looking?
Good. Stephen asked how you celebrate a World Cup, and you said you've only won one. That's not entirely true, though, is it? You were part of a title-winning Masters team.
Oh, here comes the research. Actually, yeah, I was. and I was in the midfield.
I have it on very good authority. You didn't play in goal, or did you get told to play in goal in crucial games, or how did that look?
So there was me, Pam Yates, and Kushla Litchmark as well. And we were all fighting over who didn't play in goal because none of us wanted to. Quite odd. So I think Pam was in there for the last game. But yeah, no, I wanted to play somewhere else, so I played a bit in the midfield and up front. And unfortunately timed it with Sarah Gregorius' very brief retirement from the football Ferns. And she somehow, little shit, just scraped in to being in the Masters when she was 29. I don't know how that happened. So she played up front, so I was trying to keep up with her. Ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, we did. We did win. But yeah, no, it was good fun.
And will you be back to defend that title?
Unlikely, I think. I don't know. It's funny, I think we were the over 30s and then it kind of graduates from there. So who knows? maybe in the over 60s one day or something. Who knows?
Well, I know it's been a good episode when I find myself captivated and just listening to the stories that are being told. And for an hour plus, I've been captivated by what you've said. So I've come away from this very, very happy with how it's went. Steve?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us into your home and sharing your journey. It's been an incredible one. Look forward to following wherever the next road takes you.
Thanks, it's been a lot of fun, and thanks for listening.
Cheers. Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you've made it to the end, hopefully that means you've enjoyed the episode. If that's the case and you feel strongly enough about it to share on social media, we'd greatly appreciate it. It's the quickest and easiest way to help the podcast grow. Thanks for tuning in.